All right, watch this. What's up guys, this is Preheat with another Evoker video. I've spent the last couple days running dungeons and testing various builds, and I found a lot of things that were absolutely busted. There's a lot I want to talk about today and some things I want to clarify from my previous videos, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start things off, I want to talk about the talents, and I want to specifically highlight the talents that allowed me to do the damage that I was doing in those clips in the intro. The biggest component is going to be this talent right here, Scarlet Adaptation. Scarlet Adaptation stores 20% of your effective healing, and the amount is based off of basically your spell power, and it allows you to basically consume this buff on your next living flame. It's going to deal additional damage for all of the healing that you've stored up. So we want to pair this talent with something else that allows living flame to hit more than one target. That's how I was able to do the big hit that AoE'd like 5 enemies. The talent that allows for that is Leaping Flames, and they've actually fixed this talent. It's working now. Basically, you want to fire breath into Living Flame. This is going to allow your Living Flame to strike one additional target per empowerment level. And keep in mind, we are also taking Font of Magic, which is going to make us go all the way to 4 on the empowerment levels. So if you do a maxed out empower, which is going to be level 4, with Leaping Flames, you're going to be able to hit 5 targets with that Living Flame, and on top of that, it's going to be a huge Living Flame, right? Because we are speccing into Scarlet Adaptation, which is going to increase the amount of damage a lot. We also have, a lot of the other talents that increase the damage of Living Flame. I want to briefly talk about how you're actually getting the healing out, though, because it isn't just overhealing, right? Like, you actually have to fill people's HP bars for this thing to work. So I actually picked a couple healing talents here. I think they're just generally good, but they're also really good for, like, sniping the heals for Scarlet Adaptation. So first off, we have Rescue. This is a fantastic talent. It allows you to just instantly fly to someone. It's great for positioning. You can make a mouse over macro so that you just fly to whoever your cursor is over. You're going to heal them. This is a great talent to use on someone who dips low, or if you just want to move very quickly. We also have Renewing Blaze. So this is basically like Alter Time. The healing actually starts right away. It's a huge amount of healing, right? Especially if there's a lot of damage going out. I went ahead and picked up the talent that made it so that it has a shorter cooldown here. So it's going to be just a 1-minute cooldown. Very, very strong talent. This is a fantastic way to basically fill up your Scarlet Adaptation just on your own, right? Without really losing any damage. It's also going to top you pretty much unless you get like one shot. You're not going to die while this is up, right? It's just going to keep topping you. And it's almost like it refreshes constantly. I don't really know how to describe it other than it might be like stagger for Brewmaster, but it just keeps stacking every time you take any instance of damage, and it's constantly healing you. Extremely overpowered talent. So everything else here is pretty much the same. I haven't really changed much. I just wanted to highlight one more though. Cauterizing Flame. I already talked about this talent before, but this allows you to remove bleed, poison, curse, disease effects, all of them, and it also heals the ally that you cast it on. Basically like a carrying pot you can use on someone else. Extremely strong, and another way to snipe those heals, because remember, you have to beat the healer to snipe in the heals if you want to get the Scarlet Adaptation damage in a dungeon. So, there's a couple ways to go about doing that. You can just be really vigilant about healing. You can also try to heal up after the pull, maybe ask the healer to not top you whenever you're exiting a pull. But another talent that helps you a lot to keep yourself topped and also keep the Scarlet Adaptation buff rolling is going to be Ancient Flame. And this basically makes it so that if you cast Living Flame on yourself, you're going to be, 40% faster on your next cast. Okay, so why is it that my Living Flame is doing 200k, right? Because this says that it stores up to 19k. In dungeons, it scales up to like 29k for me. How do we bridge the gap to that amount of damage? Well, it turns out you need to pick up all of the things that buff Living Flame. So obviously we have Enkindled. Over here on the Devastation side, we have Engulfing Blaze. This is going to make it so Living Flame deals 40% increased damage and healing, but its cast time is increased. We don't really care too much about that though, because we are going to be picking Burnout. Keep in mind, I'm only level 67 currently, so I don't have all of the talents available, nor is this a finished build, right? This is just one that I'm kind of showcasing for this video. But there is one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to Leaping Flames. This talent actually has another aspect to it that's a little bit underrated. So if you hit a single enemy and you have Leaping Flames up and it's going to cleave 5 targets, right? What ends up happening is you hit the main target with your Living Flame, but the rest of them actually fly and hit your allies. and that does healing to your allies. And if it does increase their HP, right, like if there's damage to heal, that is actually going to get rolled into Scarlet Adaptation once again. Additionally, if you have Ancient Flame and you happen to heal yourself, which happens quite frequently, it actually speeds up the cast of your next Living Flame as well. So this is just an insane combo. I love this combo. It's fantastic. Yeah, just 10 of 10. So that's how we basically get the big damage numbers on Living Flame. That's how we also do the healing. On the Devastation side, after more testing, they basically allowed this talent to start working. Feed the Flames is cooldown reduction on Fire Breath whenever you pyre. This was not working before at all, and now it does work. I don't have it currently slotted, but it basically makes it so that if you're playing red and you have this talent, you basically always have Fire Breath up, right? But there's actually kind of something weird about that if you think about it, right? Because don't we have a capstone that increases the duration of Fire Breath damage over time? What's the point of a capstone that increases the damage over time if we always have the dot up, right? So I'm not really sure what the idea behind this capstone is. Now that we have the ability to test the cooldown reduction and we see that, you know, Fire Breath is basically up as soon as the debuff falls off, I'm struggling to see why you would ever take Everburning Flame. It seems like this capstone is pretty much worthless in its current state, and I'd really like to see it change to maybe something else. Also, I spoke before about how it seemed like red maybe didn't have a lot of single target. There's actually a lot of single target for it. It's just you have to kind of play in an unintuitive way. So whenever you're playing red, and you're looking for that single target damage, you don't have Disintegrate to pump the single target, but you do have Burnout. And Burnout is basically an ability that, in my opinion, it seems a little bit busted. The tooltip says it's only 8%. That's incorrect. It's actually 30%. And if you talent into Engulfing Blaze with it, right? So if we pick up this one here as well, what ends up happening to Burnout is we actually have basically a huge hit from Living Flame that we can spam. And anytime you have Fire Breath, it's going to be up, which, you know, you have cooldown reduction here, right? So we can get that good cooldown reduction from Feed the Flames. Basically, you are just trying to get your Fire Breath out, and you're just trying to spam Living Flame the whole time while ignoring basically everything else. And I'm not really sure if that's the intention, right? Like, it seems like Blizzard doesn't like it whenever you ignore your essence, ignore your procs. But yeah, essentially with Feed the Flames, you're just getting Fire Breath up, you're using Fire Breath full charge, and then you're just basically spamming Living Flame until the buff falls off. While you have that Burnout buff, you're basically doing nothing else. So this is going to be kind of the single target driver for red, basically. This is how you do all of that damage. Additionally, Snapfire, I don't really think that there's any case where you take Firestorm without also taking Snapfire, but that's a little bit annoying to me because it seems like the talent's right. Because if we look, like, let's just go ahead and clear out this row. So if we unlock this last row here, right, this is basically where the most competition is for all of the talents. As soon as we plug this one in, it unlocks, right? So as you can see, Snapfire is included on this row. That basically means that if you want to play Firestorm, you pretty much have to play Snapfire. You use this buff whenever it procs, and you don't really cast Firestorm otherwise. It seems like the damage seems kind of low. But, you know, since it is on the same kind of tier, it has a lot of competition with the other talents. So I don't know if I would play Firestorm for the most part. It seems like something that maybe isn't worth it. I'm not really sure. The damage just seems way too low right now. I mean, if you're going full red, then, you know, obviously go ahead for it. But I think instead the better way of going about this is kind of something a little bit more hybrid. So this is the setup I've been using for single target. And I want to briefly kind of describe the idea behind this. So, you know, on the blue side, we have a lot of single target damage that we gain with Disintegrate. Disintegrate's going to deal 20% more damage. We're also getting, you know, Disintegrate increases damage the target takes by 10%. Scintillation is going to allow us to get random essence surges whenever we Disintegrate. So this is a lot of single target damage that we're having right here, right? But then if we also want to include even more single target, there's also Burnout. And essentially what you do with Burnout in this case, right, if you're playing blue, you Disintegrate until you have no other essence to use. You basically use everything. Once you're completely out of stuff to press, then what you're going to do is you're going to Fire Breath, and then you're just going to spam Living Flame with Burnout, right? until it's time to basically use your essence again. And it's almost like a build in conserve phase, but it's more like a blue phase and a red phase. You just go back and forth, back and forth. Whenever you run out of stuff to do with blue and you have nothing else to do, you're going to fire breath. You're just going to keep spamming living flame until you get that buff up. All your essence back, all your clear casting, and then once the buff falls off from burnout, then you're going to go back into blue. This does a lot of single target, and it's also just really fun to play. Now, if you notice, I am full charging every fire breath. I'm only charging Eternity Surge to 1 because I'm assuming that it's like single target. You know, I don't have Tyranny with this. I don't have enough levels or anything like that, so I'm not full charging my Eternity Surge every time, but that's definitely something that I'm thinking might change if we have Tyranny as well. So there is a bug currently on the alpha right now where basically if you empower your spell and you don't immediately queue up another spell within like a fraction of a second, you do incur a global cooldown. This seems to be a bug. I really hope that they fix it soon. It's quite annoying to deal with. It also seems to affect me differently depending on what zone I'm in. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and show a little bit more of an AoE oriented build. Now, I've been playing around with like a hybrid AoE build, but I kind of just have stumbled on red. It just seems like red seems to be a little bit better whenever it comes to AoE, so this is what I'm going with. And essentially the idea with this build is you want to pick up Tyranny so that you get your cooldown reduction from casting Flame Breath, and you're going to get a lot of resets on Flame Breath because Feed the Flames, the talent, makes it so that every time you pyre, you get cooldown reduction on Flame Breath. And Flame Breath is also going to make it so that your Leaping Flames hits all the targets, you know, just like the other builds. So one thing that's really interesting about this is that it seems like the Leaping Flames Living Flame has a chance to proc your Snapfire, which is the instant cast Firestorm, and also the like clear casting buff for every single target it hits. So basically every single time you do that AoE Living Flame, you're going to be getting back a lot of procs. So essentially the idea for this build is it's all about cooldown reduction, right? So you want to be making the most out of the cooldown reduction. Every time you use Fire Breath, it's going to give you cooldown reduction on Deep Breath and Dragon Fury. Every single time you use Pyre, it's going to give you cooldown reduction on Fire Breath. So these two kind of feed into each other. Obviously, whenever you use Fire Breath, you're also going to get Leaping Flames, which is going to give your Living Flame that cleave ability, right? So each single instance of that's going to give you procs. I recommend making sure that you cast that Living Flame after you've kind of spent everything and you actually have room for the essence that you're going to get, and also maybe a Snapfire buff. But just make sure that you still have Burnout up, which is going to be haste on Living Flame. But essentially, yeah, it's just, you know, you're using Fire Breath, you're flipping out the pyres as much as you can, and you're trying to get in that Living Flame whenever it kind of fits. You don't necessarily have to do it directly after a Fire Breath. You can wait. You're using Deep Breath on cooldown. You're trying to use Dragon Fury basically on cooldown. Not necessarily on the pull, though, because on the pull, you're going to get mastery just from the mobs having full health, right? So I recommend going into your first Dragon Fury kind of just like right after you do your initial opener, right? So, you know, in the opener, you're casting Firestorm, you're immediately using Tip the Scales, you're going into Fire Breath from Tip the Scales, you're flipping out the pyres, you're using your Living Flame to get the cleave, you're using the rest of the pyres that you proc from your clear casting, maybe use a Snapfire if you proc that right as well, and then you're probably going into Dragon Fury. And from there, it's just kind of like rinse, repeat. You just keep going. Don't really cast Firestorm unless I have the buff, but that may just be a thing with 4 targets. But essentially, the damage on this is really, really good, like huge AoE damage. And the single target isn't bad either, even though you don't really have all the Disintegrate talents that you would as a blue build. But overall, I mean, this is a solid AoE build. I think the main thing that I'm concerned about, though, is Burnout just feels weird. It feels like a weird talent because you're basically kind of ignoring everything else in single target and just casting your filler, which seems strange to me, like ignoring essence and stuff like that. But in AoE, it feels a lot better, right? Because you're casting a lot less Living Flames in AoE. But yeah, I just think Firestorm is maybe a little bit undertuned, and I think the fact that you have to take Snapfire afterwards to kind of get the most out of it, and it's such a, you know, high competition row like we were talking about before, that to me also seems a little bit problematic. But overall, I mean, my impressions of this class, especially when it comes to maximizing your Scarlet Adaptation, that's going to be the healing thing that we were talking about at the very start of the video. If you're sniping the heals from the healer and, you know, able to max that out basically between every pull, you're going to open every pull with like a, you know, a 200k cleave Living Flame, and it's just like, the most ridiculous amount of damage ever, and that paired with the utility that you have, because Evoker has so much utility, plus the fact that you're basically incentivized to heal, right, with like your instant casts, just try and help out the group, get as much healing in as you can. It really just makes for a very, very fun and engaging playstyle, especially in dungeons where you're just constantly trying to find healing wherever you can, and you're rewarded just so greatly for any healing that you do. So, I mean, overall, my impression of this class right now is the stonks are way up. I mean, this is like Scarlet Adaptation alone makes this class just absolutely bonkers. It's just on a whole different level. This is something that we haven't really ever seen before, and I love it. I love that you're just a DPS that's just like looking, you're like, oh, please healer, please be slow. I want to snipe that heal, right? Give me that big heal so then I can go straight into the next fire breath and do just like an insane amount of damage. Same goes for like if a high damage phase is happening, you can use your renewing blaze talent, right, to heal yourself, and it's just an insane amount of healing that counts towards Scarlet Adaptation as well. So yeah, this kind of pushes the class over the ledge, I would say. This is just completely overpowered, something that does not exist right now, and I don't think it's going to make it live. It seems way too good, but you know, we can hope, right? I do hope that Scarlet Adaptation stays in some form, just because it's such an amazing talent. But even if you don't count Scarlet Adaptation, just the amount of utility and damage and the variety and like the builds, Evoker is really looking good. And I'm seriously considering main swapping to this class. It is that good. You know, there's just so much utility with it too. Something else that I didn't mention before is Fly With Me, the utility where you grab someone and you pick them up and you move them. It doesn't interrupt their cast, right? So you could see a situation where you have like priest assignments for ramp, where like evokers are moving the priest during their ramp. You could see situations where maybe a warlock is getting PI and like, you know, is in like an outlaw CDR group and you're moving the warlock for them. Right. I mean, obviously, like, it's kind of a meme if you think about it, but it works, right? And I could see it happening. You know, whoever is like the most priority target to move for them, you can totally just do that movement for them as an evoker. But yeah, I mean, once again, what else can I say, right? Like, this class is busted. It's absolutely busted. It's the most insane thing. And good Lord, it's fun. So I'm really excited for y'all to be able to play this class. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, you know, we're going to keep it locked. We're going to keep the content coming. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of this content, then go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.